There's an overwhelming amount of evidence supporting the idea that life on Earth developed through evolutionary processes. This evidence includes fossil records, biogeography, comparative anatomy, comparative embryology, and molecular biology. The evidence is also found in the Quran. One example is in the chapter of the believers, Surat al-Muminoon, verses 12 to 14. These verses have traditionally been interpreted as describing the development of the human embryo. However, they also describe 7 major milestones in the evolution of life on Earth. Islamic scholars throughout history have understood that Quranic verses can have multiple meanings. This is tied to the concept of ta'wil, or interpretation, of the Quran, and ijtihad, or independent reason. So we will explore a fascinating and compelling alternative interpretation based on these verses. Verse 12 starts with milestone 1 by telling us that mankind was created from the essence of clay. وَلَقَدْ خَلَقْنَا الْإِنسَانَ مِنْ سُلَالَةٍ مِنْ طِينٍ. In a previous episode, we learned that scientists believe clay was critical for the establishment of life. Here is a summary of clay's role. First, clay helped create Earth's first organic chemicals, compounds necessary for life that weren't available when the Earth first formed. Secondly, clay helped chain these simple organic molecules together to make larger molecules, including a type called lipids. When enough lipids were available, they formed into vesicles with an exterior barrier similar to a cell membrane. Interestingly, a biology textbook I recently read included microscopic images of these protocells and referred to them as droplets because that is what they look like. But Earth 4.2 billion years ago was a harsh environment, experiencing heavy bombardment of asteroids and high levels of ultraviolet light. These protocell droplets had to be protected if they were to survive. Clay again played a role in this protection. The physical structure of clay surfaces is thought to have served as a scaffold for forming and protecting protocells. Lipids and other organic molecules could adhere to the clay surface, creating a stable environment for protocell droplets to grow and divide. Back to the Quran. The next verse, 13, tells us about milestone 2. ثُمَّ جَعَلْنَاهُ نُطْفَةً فِي قَرَارٍ مَكِينٍ. Then we made it a drop, placed in a firm lodging. Subhanallah. Protocell droplets were assembled from the lipids that were created and protected by clay. We should note that a protocell droplet is not a life yet. Biologists don't have a universally agreed upon definition of life. Since we are discussing cells and protocells, the definition of life from microbiology is probably the best one to use. And according to microbiologists, one criteria for life is the ability to reproduce and pass down genetic information to offspring, and that requires RNA or DNA. In a previous episode on surat alaq, we explored several reasons why alaq could be DNA, a molecule that is coded and can be read. Again, check out that episode if you want more details. So in other words, according to microbiology, life requires alaq. And so, verse 14 of this chapter gives us milestone 3 on DNA and RNA.
ثُمَّ خَلَقْنَا النُّطْفَةَ عَلَقَةً.
Then we created from the droplet alaq, RNA or DNA. Double subhanallah. Milestone 1 gave us organic materials including lipids. Milestone 2 gave us protocells. And at this point, milestone 3, we have Earth's first life, the first prokaryotic cell. Some of these cells eventually became photosynthetic. Over the next 2 billion years, oxygen accumulated in the atmosphere, ozone formed in the stratosphere, more advanced eukaryotic cells developed, and multicellular organisms arose. The first multicellular organisms were more like simple aggregations of cells with loose cooperation, soft body structures, with simple reproduction. Soft body organisms developed about 1.2 billion years ago to about 500 million years ago. We see milestone 4 in the next Quranic verse, number 14. فَخَلَقْنَا الْعَلَقَةَ مُضْغَةً. And eventually, from the alaq, or RNA or DNA, we created flesh. So milestone 4 is about soft body creatures. The first hard-bodied organisms appeared around 550 to 540 million years ago during the late Ediacaran period and into the Cambrian period, often called the Cambrian explosion. This marked a significant evolutionary milestone because hard parts like shells, exoskeletons, and teeth provided protection, structural support, and advantages in mobility and feeding. These early organisms with exoskeletons are called arthropods. Examples include trilobites, which are now extinct. They were among the earliest arthropods with a fully developed mineralized exoskeleton. Archaeocyathans, early reef-building organisms with rigid calcium carbonate skeletons. Brachiopods, shell-bearing organisms resembling clams but anatomically distinct. And Wiwaxia, soft-bodied organisms with protective spines and scales. Driven by evolutionary processes like predation, environmental changes, and the need for structural support, the shift from soft-body to hard-body organisms left a dramatic increase in fossil evidence because hard parts preserved much better than soft tissues. Scientists call this period the Cambrian explosion because fossils show such an apparent burst of diversity. Surat al-Muminoon verse 14 continues to describe this milestone 5. فَخَلَقْنَا الْمُضْغَةَ عِظَامًا. And eventually we created for the flesh bones. This milestone development of external skeletons laid the foundation for the modern diversity of animals and skeletons and shells. The next milestone in the evolutionary development was the formation of endoskeletons, or internal skeletons. Whereas an exoskeleton is an external rigid covering for the outer body, like those we see today on insects and spiders, an endoskeleton is located inside the body and provides structural support, protects organs, but also allows movement through the attachment of muscles. According to science, 520 million years ago, vertebrates developed. By the Ordovician period, 480 million years ago, after about 40 million years, true vertebrates with mineralized skeletons, jaws, and scales began to appear, representing a significant leap in the complexity of life. Vertebrates provided structural support and protection from predators. Jaws allowed the vertebrates greater versatility in feeding, and vertebrates developed more complex nervous systems and sensory organs like eyes, allowing them to perceive and respond to their environment with greater precision. And so the Quran, Surat al-Muminoon, verse 14, continues with milestone 6, فَكَسَوْنَا الْعِظَامَ لَحْمًا, and eventually covered the bones with meat, muscle, and organs. Like mud'a, which we first saw in milestone 4, lahm, here in milestone 6, is also soft tissue. But unlike mud'a, which is flesh, lahm refers to muscles and is a more advanced stage of development. The first vertebrates appeared during the Cambrian and Ordovician periods. They eventually evolved into the diverse and dominant vertebrates we see today. Here are some milestones in the development of vertebrates. 359 million years ago, vertebrates expanded to land, and amphibians spread into many niches. Early reptiles could go deeper into land where amphibians couldn't go. That is because reptiles evolved waterproof eggs and scales, allowing them to colonize dry environments more efficiently, outcompeting amphibians in many niches. This innovation paved the way for later vertebrate dominance on land. So, 252 to 66 million years ago, the Mesozoic era, became the age of reptiles. During this time, vertebrates dominated land, sea, and air. Dinosaurs became the dominant terrestrial vertebrates during the Triassic, Jurassic, and Cretaceous periods. Marine reptiles like the ichthyosaurs, plesiosaurs, and mosasaurs dominated the ocean, and pterosaurs ruled the skies. Milestone 6 was indeed a major milestone in the evolution of life. Then, 66 million years ago, the Cenozoic era started. An asteroid struck Earth and killed off 75% of the species of the planet. This was a major mass extinction. Water and land-based dinosaurs went extinct, and birds were the only surviving descendants of dinosaurs. Without the large dinosaur reptiles that had dominated the Earth for 170 million years, a new creation began to form. In this age, mammals flourished, ushering in the age of mammals. Their adaptive radiation onto all ecosystems is incredibly significant to the vast diversity of life we see today. And thus, the seventh and final milestone, the mass extinction 66 million years ago, and the adaptive radiation of mammals, caps off these Quranic verses.
ثم أنشأناه خلقا آخر.
Then we willed into being another creation. Verse 14 ends with something that should now be obvious. فَتَبَارَكَ اللَّهُ أَحْسَنُ الْخَالِقِينَ. So blessed is God, the best of creators. Triple subhanallah. I'll put links to some interesting books in the description, including an interesting numerical pattern in these verses. The point of this video is that the Quran accurately reflects the process of biological evolution in 7 milestones mentioned in the chapter of the believers, verse 12 to 14, including the formation of organic compounds from clay, the formation and protection of protocells, the development of genetic materials, RNA and DNA, the first multicellular organisms, and the development of exoskeletons, the development of vertebrates, and the mass extinction event that led to the rise of mammals. If you enjoyed this video, please like, subscribe, and share.